Former President Donald Trump addressed a packed ballroom at his Mar-a-Lago estate on November 14, 2024. The atmosphere was electric, with anticipation hanging thick in the air as supporters and media alike waited to hear what the former president had to say. The ballroom, adorned with patriotic decorations and the iconic American flag, was a fitting backdrop for what promised to be a significant speech. The occasion was the annual dinner of the America First Policy Institute, or AFPI. This event has become a cornerstone for conservative thought leaders and policymakers, a place where ideas are exchanged and future strategies are discussed. The AFPI dinner is not just a social gathering, it is a forum for shaping the future of conservative politics in America. It was a night for familiar faces and, well, fiery rhetoric. The room was filled with prominent figures from the conservative movement, many of whom have been staunch supporters of Trump since his first presidential campaign. The energy was palpable as Trump took the stage, ready to deliver a speech that would undoubtedly make headlines. Trump used the platform to outline his vision for America's future. He spoke passionately about the need for strong leadership and a return to the principles that he believes made America great. His vision was clear: a nation that is strong, prosperous, and respected on the global stage. He focused heavily on foreign policy and national security. Trump emphasized the importance of a robust military and a foreign policy that puts America first. He criticized current administration policies, arguing that they have weakened America's standing in the world. His message was one of strength and resilience, a call to action for his supporters to rally behind his vision. The speech was classic Trump bold pronouncements, sharp attacks on his opponents, and a healthy dose of self-promotion. He did not shy away from criticizing his political adversaries, calling out what he sees as their failures and shortcomings. At the same time, he highlighted his own achievements and the successes of his administration, painting a picture of a leader who is ready to take on the challenges of the future. The crowd, a mix of conservative luminaries, donors, and die-hard Trump supporters, roared their approval. The applause was thunderous, a testament to the loyalty and enthusiasm of his base. These are the people who believe in Trump's vision and are ready to support him in whatever political endeavors he chooses to pursue. The energy in the room was palpable. It was more than just a political event. It was a rallying cry for a movement that sees itself as the true defender of American values. The excitement was infectious, spreading through the crowd like wildfire as Trump continued to speak. It was clear that Trump was back in his element, relishing the spotlight and eager to reclaim his mantle as leader of the Republican Party. He seemed energized by the crowd's response, feeding off their enthusiasm and using it to drive home his points. This was a man who thrives on the adoration of his supporters and is ready to lead them once again. His words resonated with the audience. They nodded in agreement, cheered at his bold statements, and showed their support with enthusiastic applause. This was a crowd that was fully engaged, hanging on to every word and ready to follow Trump's lead. They were hungry for a return to what they saw as a time of strength and prosperity under his leadership. The stakes were high. For many in the room, this was not just about politics. It was about the future of the country and the values they hold dear. They believe that Trump is the leader who can bring back the prosperity and security they long for. Trump was not just addressing a room full of supporters. He was speaking to a nation grappling with complex challenges at home and abroad. His message was one of hope and determination, a call to action for all Americans to come together and work towards a brighter future. He was speaking to a nation grappling with complex challenges at home and abroad. From economic uncertainty to international tensions, the issues facing America are numerous and daunting. Trump acknowledged these challenges, but he also offered solutions, promising to tackle them head-on with the same determination and resolve that characterized his first term in office. His speech was a clear signal that he intended to be a major player on the national stage for years to come. He hinted at future political ambitions, leaving little doubt that he is considering another run for the presidency. This was not just a speech. It was a declaration of intent, a promise to his supporters that he is not done fighting for the America he believes in. The world was watching, eager to see if the former president could recapture the magic that propelled him to the White House in 2016. International media covered the event extensively, highlighting the global interest in Trump's political future. His speech was not just a message to America, it was a message to the world, a statement that Donald Trump is still a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. The centerpiece of Trump's speech was his pledge to end the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. This promise was not just another campaign rhetoric. It was a bold declaration that aimed to capture the attention of both his supporters and critics alike. The conflict, which has caused immense suffering and geopolitical instability, was a focal point of his address. "I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours, Trump declared, his voice booming through the room. His confidence was palpable, and the audience could feel the weight of his words. It was a statement that seemed to defy the complexities of international diplomacy, yet it was delivered with such conviction that it left many wondering if he could indeed pull it off. The statement was met with thunderous applause from the audience. The crowd, filled with loyal supporters, erupted in cheers, their faces lighting up with hope and excitement. It was clear that Trump's promise had struck a chord with those who were desperate for a resolution to the conflict. It was a vintage Trump moment, a bold and seemingly impossible promise that played directly to his base's desire for a strong leader. His supporters have always admired his audacity and willingness to take on challenges that others shy away from. This moment was no different, as he positioned himself as the only one capable of bringing peace to a troubled region. Trump offered few specifics on how he would achieve this ambitious goal. His speech was light on details but heavy on confidence. He spoke in broad strokes, painting a picture of a world where his leadership would bring about swift and decisive action. The lack of specifics did not seem to bother his supporters, who were more interested in the promise of action than the details of the plan. He did, however, reiterate his belief that the conflict would never have happened if he were still president. This was a recurring theme in his speeches, where he often contrasted his administration's policies with those of his successor. He argued that his approach to foreign policy was more effective and that his leadership would have prevented the escalation of tensions. He argued that his strong relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his tough stance on NATO had kept Russia in check. Trump emphasized that his diplomatic skills and personal rapport with world leaders were key to maintaining global stability. He painted a picture of a world where his influence kept adversaries at bay and allies in line. It was a familiar refrain from Trump, who has consistently blamed the Biden administration for the war in Ukraine. He accused the current administration of weakness and indecision, suggesting that their policies had emboldened Russia. This criticism was a central part of his narrative, as he sought to draw a clear distinction between his leadership and that of his successor. The promise to end the war in Ukraine was more than just a foreign policy objective for Trump. It was a symbol of his broader vision for America's role in the world. He spoke of a nation that was strong, decisive, and respected on the global stage. His pledge was not just about ending a conflict. It was about restoring America's position as a leader in international affairs. It was a central theme of his speech, woven into his broader message of American strength and global leadership. Trump portrayed himself as a leader who could bring about a new era of peace and prosperity. He spoke of a future where America's influence would be felt around the world, and where conflicts would be resolved swiftly and decisively. By vowing to achieve what others deemed impossible, Trump was positioning himself as the only leader capable of restoring order to a chaotic world. His message was clear. Under his leadership, America would once again be a force for good, bringing stability and peace to troubled regions. This vision resonated with many voters who were tired of endless wars and longed for a return to normalcy. It was a message that was sure to resonate with voters weary of endless wars and eager for a return to peace and prosperity. Trump's promise offered a glimmer of hope in a world that often seems filled with conflict and uncertainty. His bold declaration was a reminder of his unique ability to capture the imagination of his supporters and to offer them a vision of a better future. Trump's promise to end the war in Ukraine was inextricably linked to his scathing critique of U.S. foreign policy under the Biden administration. He often used his platform to highlight what he saw as the failures of his predecessor's approach to international conflicts. He specifically targeted what he perceived as wasteful spending on foreign interventions. Trump argued that the billions of dollars funneled into these conflicts could have been better spent on domestic priorities such as infrastructure, healthcare, and education. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, which Trump himself initiated, served as a prime example. He pointed to the chaotic scenes and the rapid collapse of the Afghan government as evidence of the futility of prolonged military engagements. "We spent trillions in the Middle East and got nothing, absolutely nothing," he thundered, his voice laced with indignation. His rhetoric was designed to resonate with an audience that had grown weary of endless wars and the financial burden they imposed. The crowd erupted in agreement. Many of his supporters shared his frustration and felt that the resources spent on foreign wars could have been used to address pressing issues at home. The chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021 had left a bitter taste in the mouths of many Americans. The images of desperate Afghans clinging to departing planes and the swift takeover by the Taliban were seared into the national consciousness. Trump tapped into this sentiment, arguing that the Biden administration had squandered American lives and treasure in a futile nation-building exercise. He claimed that the hasty exit was a sign of poor planning and weak leadership. He contrasted this with his own approach, which he characterized as one of America First pragmatism. Trump emphasized that his policies were designed to prioritize the needs and interests of American citizens above all else. Trump's criticism of U.S. foreign policy resonated with a growing sense of disillusionment among Americans about the country's role in the world. Many felt that the U.S. had overextended itself and that it was time to focus on rebuilding at home. Decades of costly military interventions in the Middle East and elsewhere have left many questioning the wisdom of such engagements. The human and financial costs have been staggering, leading to a reevaluation of America's foreign policy priorities. Trump capitalized on this sentiment, positioning himself as a champion of fiscal responsibility and a critic of what he saw as the foreign policy establishment's misguided priorities. He argued that a more restrained approach to international conflicts would allow the U.S. to invest more in its own future. His message of putting America first and reducing foreign entanglements struck a chord with many voters who were tired of seeing their tax dollars spent on wars with no clear end in sight. Trump often highlighted the potential benefits of redirecting military spending to domestic projects. He painted a picture of a stronger, more prosperous America, where resources were used to improve the lives of its citizens. His speeches were filled with promises of better roads, better schools, and better health care, all funded by the savings from ending what he called endless wars. This vision of a revitalized America resonated deeply with many, offering a stark contrast to the years of conflict and expenditure abroad. As Trump continued to hammer home his message, it became clear that the ghost of Afghanistan would continue to haunt U.S. spending and foreign policy debates for years to come. Central to Trump's foreign policy vision was a commitment to rebuilding and modernizing the U.S. military. "We will have the strongest military in the history of the world, by far," he pledged, drawing cheers from the audience. But Trump's vision of military strength was not solely focused on military hardware. He also emphasized the need for a strong economy to support it. Trump argued that his economic policies, which focused on tax cuts and deregulation, were essential to generating the wealth necessary to fund a powerful military. He contrasted his approach with that of the Biden administration, which he accused of saddling the country with debt and stifling economic growth. "We will not apologize for making America wealthy again," Trump declared, prompting another wave of applause. The linkage between economic strength and military might was a recurring theme in Trump's speech. It reflected his belief that America's ability to project power on the world stage was directly tied to its economic vitality. By promising to restore both, Trump was tapping into a deep-seated desire among many Americans for a return to an era when the United States was the undisputed